Casey Bartley from Boiler Upload. And Casey, we have been talking about this matchup. For me, it's Indiana has to contain Purdue's perimeter play. They have three guys that are averaging in double figures. That is what makes this team better than last year. The addition of Lance Jones, which is ironic. You bring in one guy, and it makes a huge difference. I don't know how much better this team actually is because they've still last year they almost lost at Nebraska. This year they do lose to Nebraska, and they're sitting with two losses a little earlier this season, I think, than they were last year. And if they were to lose this game, it would be amazing because that would have them sitting in third place in the Big Ten at this time, which would be shocking to me. The fact that Indiana and Purdue are tied is a little surprising, but they are as we head into this game tonight. But Purdue is also smarting from losing 3 out of the last 4, which is also something that's in their minds. I know Zach Edey, that stuff matters to him, but that's not what Matt Painter is preaching. He is just focused on this game and winning this game. Nothing else matters outside of that. Nothing that happened last year matters. Nothing that happened the year before that matters. This is right here and right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Purdue is panicking as a team because they sit number 2 in the Big Ten because they, also sit number 2 in the country. They do have 2 losses, but both of them road games on the Big Ten. I think it's pretty clear that the road is going to be hard for everyone this year. I do think it makes a difference that these guys coming in aren't true freshmen like they were last year. Fletcher Loyer and Braden Smith, both at times were overwhelmed. Both at times were physically not up to par last year. I think that kind of thing makes a difference in their second season. And Lance Jones really has just provided this constant energy. I've been watching a lot of last year's team and just the amount of time that their offense would get stuck last year. When they couldn't get the ball into Edey, there wasn't a whole bunch else they had going on at times. The turnovers were a problem. They still turned the ball over this year, but just the overall motion and the way the offense is whirring this year, like it's night and day at times compared to last year. Defensively, I think IU can do a couple things with their 2 bigs, both on offense and defense. That'll be interesting to see how Edey handles it, but it's going to be a fun game. Assembly Hall, there's not many places that get better for big games than Assembly Hall.
Yeah, that is something that Indiana does have in its favor, and they are a valuable 6th man. And anybody that doesn't think that is nuts and obviously has not been to Assembly Hall for a big game. There's a reason Indiana has and have a penchant for knocking off top 5 teams when they probably shouldn't, because let's just face it, it's freaking hard to play in there. You cannot hear when you're down on that court. And for those that aren't sitting on the court, the noise that everybody is making, if you look at the design of that arena, it is designed like theaters. And that noise all rains down. And there's too many guys that have told me that, dude, you can't hear. You have to use hand signals. And that does matter. But it does not always mean it's going to equate to a win. But it's a hell of a 6th man to have.
Can I ask you, I've been to Bloomington quite a few times. I like the city. The campus is pretty. A lot of good things. Why are y'all so angry down there?
It's students, number one.
It's the most angry, there's just a hostility from.
I'll tell you why. There. I'll tell you exactly why. Okay. In my opinion, the AP poll just celebrated 75 years of polls. Indiana still, with all the crap they've gone through in all of these years, is still the 8th highest ranked team in 75 years of the Big Ten poll. That's what Indiana fans are used to. But they haven't been getting that, and they're sick and tired of it because there's no reason not to be able to get back there. You just have to have the right person at the right time, and that just hasn't happened. I put this out in the tweet the other day, and I didn't really say anything. I just put out Ole Miss is 15-1 right now. Last year they were 13-21. What is the difference? They hired a very good college coach in Chris Beard. It matters who you put in the right position. And that's one, an answer to your question.
Mhm.
Two, students. They have the largest student congregation of any team in the country as far as allotment of seats. Half of them are from out of state. None of them have seen true success at Indiana basketball. And to me, that's why. There's no reason. Indiana has the resources. This is a state that puts out the talent year in, year out. And there's just simply no reason for Indiana not to be successful, yet they have not been able to really find that recipe. And it's mind-boggling. And now that we've entered the transfer portal era, it makes it even, I don't want to use the word easier, but more attainable, I guess I should say.
Yeah, I kind of wrote about this last night after talking with Trey Kaufman-Wren during practice yesterday, because I'm talking to him, and he's an interesting guy to begin with.
I'll be honest with you, I truly believe he would have been at Indiana had it not been for Archie Miller. If Archie Miller wasn't the coach,
IU was never on his radar.
Archie Miller. That's because Archie Miller was there.
Well, he's been pretty locked in. He was a Louisville fan growing up, but I just thought it was funny because we were talking about Purdue, and he doesn't really understand the IU Purdue dynamic, because to him growing up, he didn't know about Purdue growing up, and then he's like, Purdue's the blue blood in my eyes. For as long as I've been here, we've been number one.
Well, I don't think he has an understanding of what a blue blood is. A blue blood,
I don't think IU does right now.
Well, dude, when you have 5 national championships and you started in the 40s and your success covers decades, that's what it is. They've still been to a Final Four more recently than Purdue has.
Well, obviously, I can't argue for Purdue's state in that matter, but
Purdue is not a blue blood and not close to it. They're a Big Ten blue blood.
That's
they're not. They haven't won a national championship. How could they be considered a blue blood? They're a Big Ten blue blood. I'll give you that. They're definitely a Big Ten blue blood.
16-year-olds don't care about that. They don't care about things that didn't happen.
They cannot care about it, but that doesn't make them right. They don't know what a blue blood is.
Well, it's not going to matter if they keep choosing Purdue over IU, though. So
that's
my point.
I'm not. They're definitely the more successful program.
Right.
I'm not going to give you that. They are, and they have been the most dominant program in their growing up years, in their little 4-year span of high school. That's without question.
I just think we, as people who are used to the dynamic of IU being seen as up on this pedestal, I don't think kids coming in and high school recruits, they don't really see it that way anymore.
No, I agree.
We can argue the parameters of that, but it's just weird because it would seem laughable 30 years ago to say the talent from Indiana is going to Purdue. You'd be like, what? No. But now that's just kind of how they see it, because legacy and stuff like that. I mean, there's 7 coaches that have national titles at this point. It just keeps recycling between them, and IU and Purdue don't have either of them right now.
Yep. IU is just not had the success that they should have. And not only have they not had success, they have made bad hires that have just pushed him forward. Archie Miller was just, I'm looking at Jeff Goodman put out the worst hires in Division I of the last 20 years. Archie Miller's not on it. Well, that's because they're buddies, and he does a podcast on the Field of 68 network that he owns. So he's not going to put him on there. But let me tell you, he's got Tom Crean at Georgia. Georgia has never been a basketball. So who cares? How's that a horrible hire? When you don't do jack at Indiana, that's a bad hire. But regardless of that fact, Indiana has to they've got to come around. And for people to say they expected a drop off in year 3 under Mike Woodson, that makes zero sense to me. Zero sense to me. The goal is to have an upward trend. So when you say you expected a drop off in year 3, I'm like, what the hell are you talking about?
It's Ben Johnson's 3rd year at Minnesota, right?
Yes.
And what are they doing now?
They are, well, they
way better
beat by Indiana, but
correct,
they are way better than they were.
Right. Yeah.
Nebraska, Fred Hoiberg, it's taken him a long time. I mean, how long has he been there? 5 years?
Right.
But that's Nebraska.
Right. It's a little bit like starting quarterbacks. Like after 3 years, you have to see something. It's weird that it's still the same issue with Indiana. The lack of 3-point shooting. When I
shooting
look at,
period. Hell, they can't shoot free throws.
When I look at like ways that teams are going to beat Purdue, and if IU's going to knock this off, like they're going to need shooting. And it's just hard to, when your guards shoot the way IU does, it's just hard to imagine they're going to dominate everywhere else enough.
I know Woody is a smart guy.
Mm-hmm.
He played basketball at a high level. He played here. He played for Bob Knight. He was with the NBA for 40 years, yada, yada. I understand that. What I don't understand is he's sick and tired of being asked about his substitution patterns. But every time he would be asked about it, he would answer it as if someone was asking him something different. It's the question is not about subbing. Everybody knows you have to sub. We all know that. But you don't have to sub everybody at the same time. And that's not what was being answered. So you got that. He doesn't want to talk about it. He was asked about why Indiana's being so unbelievably out-rebounded. And his answer is, well, you got to block people out. No crap. We all know that. Why is Indiana not doing that? Why are they not doing that? So why they're not doing things, that question is not being answered. And I don't know if there isn't an answer or what, but tonight they're going to have to find something in order to beat this Purdue team. Now, it is going to be, playing in Assembly Hall is and should always be extraordinarily difficult for anybody. I don't care how good you are. And how good you are can be affected by that, because let me tell you, you can't mimic that. You can't mimic it in practice, and the lack of being able to communicate sometimes can affect. But even with that, the other team has to perform. Indiana is shooting like 60-something% as a team from the free throw line. If you're in a close game, that's going to cost you. And things like that. Purdue has added Lance Jones, and that has probably been the best thing that they've done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just adding a dynamic guy who can't get caught, can't get stepped up. Like, he's just so lightning fast. He's good for 2 to 3 transition buckets a game, not afraid to shoot. And he's a guy who can just go be a stopper. There will probably be moments where he's guarding Galloway, Xavier Johnson, Mackenzie Mbako. Like, they trust him to take on any guy on the perimeter. And Purdue really didn't have that last year. And I think they have 2 of them this year with the way that Camden Heide has been stepping up and playing as a redshirt freshman. So especially when you go up against a team like IU that's so big on the perimeter, throwing in 2 dynamic guys like that, it's a different team than last year. That said, the elixir for IU has been seemingly to play Purdue. They've played their best ball games of the season the last couple of years against Purdue. It'll be curious if they can do it still without Trace Jackson Davis and Jalen Hood-Schifino, who were the stars of both of those games. So,
so it's a different dynamic because they
correct.
do have a couple of bigs that are better than the 2 bigs they had when you combined them.
Right.
With Trace and Race. Trace, of course, stood out, but Race, as good as he is, he didn't bring the dynamic between that Kel'el Ware and Malik Renew. Both of those guys can step out and shoot the 3. Is one of them able to pull Edey out? Who's going to guard? Who's Edey going to guard, in your estimation?
I think just because of the way the starting lineup is, is Xavier Johnson starting for you guys?
My guess right now is no, but
No.
that's a guess. That is strictly a guess.
I assume that Purdue is going to start with Edie on Ware. And I think Painter will be happy to hide Edie on Walker or Sparks whenever they come in. Maybe even
But what if he's on Ware? Ware's going to probably do his best to get Edie outside.
Right. That's definitely an issue. But at the same time, it's not been great. But has IU's offense been disciplined enough to take advantage of a matchup throughout a whole game? And then the other part is like Ware cannot stick with Edie. It's the same issue as last. Trace Jackson Davis couldn't guard Edie last year.
Well, who can?
Yeah, no one can. So it's still a give and take. I think
I could put you on my shoulders and we couldn't guard.
Right. No, give me a steel chair and I'm not going to take him out. I think that is what makes this matchup so fun, though, because I think we're doing where both the way they move on offense and the way they're able to get around, like Edie has problems with guys that can relocate very quickly. And with how vertical those two guys can be, they're definitely going to get some hoops on that end. I think it would almost be a disservice to IU's offense if you just stick them outside. I think you would involve them in the pick and roll, get them on the move, make Edie have to make choices on defense. It's still not something he's the most comfortable at. And I think just using either big as a shooter would be a net win for Purdue.